What highly illegal thing took place at your high school? Two students planned and carried out a coordinated attack on one of the math teachers by waiting by the top of the stairs between periods. And when he passed by them to go down the steps, one of them pushed him from behind while the other put his legs out to trip him. The teacher fell down the steps and broke his neck and back and was paralyzed from the neck down. The kid's reasoning, because one of them was dropped from the basketball team because he was failing that teacher's math class. Both of them were 15 years old, so they didn't get jail time. They both got expelled and were sent to juvenile detention. The teacher sued the school district and got a settlement in the lower 7-digit range. These teachers really don't get paid enough. Story 2. I interviewed to teach at a high school once. One of the questions from the school board was, can you avoid sleeping with your students? Me. Yes, I can. School board thinks I'm great. Principal thinks I'm great. Superintendent of schools doesn't think I'm cut out for the job. Gives me the runaround. Principal is trying to help me push through it and get hired, but I finally give up and get a normal job elsewhere. Superintendent hires his nephew. Wonder why he gave me the runaround. Who promptly has sex with a student and gets fired. I still see the principal occasionally, and he always apologizes. I wanted to hire you. He's way too nice to have been stuck at that lousy school. Well, the bar is pretty low. Does this guy even sleep with students? I don't think so. Well, then we can't hire him. Story 3. We had a softball coach sleep with his students. But a far more interesting story that didn't technically take place on school grounds. There was this kid who was constantly being harassed by bullies. They would even follow him after school and attack him. So there was this hardware store across the street, and a lot of kids would hang out in the parking lot after school. The bullies chased the kid inside and cornered him in the garden section. They kept hitting and kicking him, so the dude grabbed an axe from one of the shelves and just started swinging. All the bullies ended up in the hospital with various injuries. Security camera got the whole thing, but I can't remember now if Gimli, son of Gloin, was charged or if it was ruled self-defense. Update. I followed up with my sister, who actually knew the kids involved better than me. She was closer to their age. The news articles that came out at the time didn't really talk about the pattern of abuse that led to the axe kicking, but she did confirm that Gimli was sent to juvenile corrections for a while. She remembered when he got out, and as far as she knew, he was doing well. This guy really knocked it out of the park with the wordplay. I have nothing to add. Story 4. A special ed kid got jumped by a dude on his way to school and was beaten bloody. The whole thing was recorded by a guy's girlfriend and her friend. The whole time they were cheering him on and yelling things like, "World Star!" and so on. She later posted it on Instagram, which made everyone want to beat the dude up in the vid. He was given temporary suspension. Freaking BS. While the police took care of him. From what I know, he was given an assault charge. Also, side note, there was a girl at my school who was in a minor league boxing who was ready to beat him up. She even tried looking for him by his house. That's sad. But good on that girl though. Not all heroes wear capes, but they do box in minor leagues. Story 5. Little bit of backstory first. Our school had a big renovation ongoing, and because of that, almost half of the school was closed down. The closed part included the biggest bathrooms, and because of that, the school administration ordered 2 toilet barracks to be placed on the schoolyard. So, some 7th to 9th graders decided to buy some toilet pipe opener liquid. I don't know what the correct term is. And aluminum foil. They put the aluminum foil inside some plastic bottles and poured a little pipe opener in them with the foil. As someone has probably done this before and knows what is going to happen next, they stuck 6 bottles total inside the toilet bowls in every stall of one barrack and blew them up due to the chemical reaction between the foil and the opener. All the pipings of the single barrack were destroyed due to the water pressure inside the pipes. Turns out that the 2 barracks had connected pipings, and the water in the bowls in the other barrack shot up to the ceiling due to pressure. The students never got caught, and if I remember correctly, the incident ended up costing a hefty amount for the school administration. The barracks were taken away and were replaced with new ones. After the incident, every recess there was a teacher in front of the barracks monitoring everyone going in or out. Nothing happened in the new toilets. I hope nothing was in those toilets at least. That would stink. Okay, I'll see myself out. Story 6. My ex brought a gun to school and threatened to shoot me and my new boyfriend. Edit. This happened in the Philippines about 8 years ago. Our high school wasn't on the K-12 system, so we had 4-year levels and around 80 students per year level. This was in our 3rd year. We were all the same year, and everybody involved kept going to that school. The rest of the students and faculty heard about it, and eventually it got to some parents. The mother of my new boyfriend did not appreciate the fact that her son was threatened with a gun, so she tried to take legal action. The mother of my ex-boyfriend did not appreciate this, And since my ex and I had a turbulent history, which I've posted about here before, she tried to take legal action as well. Nothing ever came of either of those attempts though. He didn't get suspended. He didn't get into any trouble for it at all, and actually graduated with honors, I think. The professors didn't offer counseling to any of us. There were no heightened security measures, no seminars on safety. My parents initially didn't believe my account of it and didn't file a restraining order. The whole mess was basically swept under the rug. Well, Philippines, you might not have the K-12 system, but you nailed just about every aspect of school. Story 7. This came up in a previous thread some time ago. I went to an incredibly crappy school in London that was in special measures by the time I left at 18, after a year with about 50% attendance and 3 U grades at A-level. It is apparently doing fairly well now, since it has been amalgamated into the fold of a local superhead who runs several schools across the surrounding boroughs. But I will paste what I shared last time since people seemed to like it then. We had many. Dog/hammer fight in my first week. Rush day. 1 day per year the kids in year 7 would just get random beats. A couple of stabbings per year. Kid locked the woodwork teacher in the toilets. Woodwork teacher kicked the door off its hinges and said about the kid the very same way. Someone stole all the computers from the computer room. Kid was stripped and all his clothes and belongings were doused in lighter fluid and burned. Head teacher left for lunch one day and never came back. Our only person making the timetables was the admin/business teacher. Died of a heart attack during a class. Starting the following year, no classes were organized for 2 months. Graduation year to A2 to boot. Still received weekly notices about attendance during that period. History teacher got pregnant by another teacher. Conception apparently on site. They weren't in a relationship. Someone started a rumor that she was S8 and he was also into children. He had to leave the school. Superhead, brought in to get us ship-shape, known for taking no crap and turning schools around. Made her quit her entire decades-long career. Couldn't hire new teachers. Woodworking department was abandoned after previous incident. Kid trapped another kid in there with a mind to reenact some hostile crap and tried to slice his femoral artery with a sharpened file. This said it was a school in London, right? Not a prison? Story 8. Oh, here's my time to shine. Someone smeared peanut butter all over the allergy table. Someone spray painted a swastika and wrote homophobic and racist messages all over the walls. A lot of people bring drugs and alcohol. Someone took all the fire extinguishers and set them off in the cafeteria. Someone threatened to bomb the school multiple times. Someone beat up a teacher. Someone assisted an unalive attempt. Someone caught 2 foreign exchange students having relations with each other in the girls' bathroom during the lunch period. This isn't technically illegal, but someone started default dancing during the moment of silence on 9/11. What a mad lad. Reading this, I'm realizing just how tame my school really was. Story 9. One afternoon, a while after school was over, a couple kids started a drug deal. The basher, Goliath, he lived up to that name too, absolute unit, was a renowned druggie who did every drug known to man, and 7 only known to dolphins. And the Banshee, whom I'll call Carl, tried to sell Goliath some heroin strong enough to kill a baby elephant. Goliath proceeds to take some and test it out on the spot, but proceeds to notice that it is a bit weaker than promised, and was basically no stronger than water. Goliath, a bit angry he was undersold, grabs Carl and smashes his head into the nearest brick wall repeatedly until parts of Carl's brain splatter over the wall. Goliath snaps back to reality, realizing what he just did, and freaking runs like a madman, as anyone in that situation would. He was caught, however, and given a long sentence. Not sure if he is still out there alive or if he got his head bashed by a bigger Goliath. Holy kingpin! Okay, it might not have been strong heroin, but the steroids sure kicked in. Story 10. 3 from when I lived in Florida. 1. Someone thought it would be funny to leave baby powder in the boys' bathroom and got the school locked down for an anthrax attack. We didn't get to go home until 7 p.m. 2. Bomb threats. So many bomb threats. 3. Legit race war. Super racist skinheads attacked a Puerto Rican student during lunch outside, blindsided him with a lunch tray. He started yelling, massive fight broke out, 30+ students arrested. My friends and I watched him from the other side of the courtyard in awe. Got to enter a witness police report too. Considering this is Florida and a high school, that's not that bad. Story 11. Not my school, but friends. 2 students threw a chair from a balcony. They've hit an 8-month pregnant teacher. She passed out. The principal refused to let an ambulance evacuate her from school grounds because it'd tatter the school's reputation. So she had the custodian drag the unconscious, bleeding, pregnant teacher out of the school, and only then she called the ambulance. The teacher has had a stillbirth consequently to the incident. Just how popular of a reputation do you need before you have to drag pregnant, bleeding ladies out of the property before you'll call 911? Story 12. When I was a freshman, a group of seniors free climbed the side of a 23-story building downtown wearing our school sweatshirts on senior skip day. They made it all the way up and were greeted by the police and fire department, who immediately arrested them. They ended up paying a huge fine for all of the emergency services that responded. It was all over every local news channel. Well, that's quite the senior skip day. For me, I just slept in until like 1 o'clock and then got McDonald's for breakfast. Story 13. After the 2016 election, some kid tweeted a picture of Donald Trump with some badly photoshopped crosshairs over his head. Secret Service actually came to the school and took the kid away in the middle of class. I later learned that all they did was give him a stern talk, just enough to scare the crap out of him. I actually had the teacher whose class got interrupted at a later period. Turns out the Secret Service guy was an old buddy of his from the Marines. Wow. And he got in trouble because he tweeted the picture of the president or because the Photoshop was so poor. Story 14. Tar football player rammed my car with his truck on purpose and totaled it. Principal and vice principals all turned a blind eye and played it down like, boys will be boys. He hit my freaking car on purpose and nobody cared. My parents and I go in to see the vice principal in charge of student parking, and all the VP has to offer is, well, maybe we can have him pay your deductible. No punishment, detention, anything. His parents didn't seem to care either. Mind you, this is a car I bought with my own money that was in need of repairs at the time, that my father and I worked on as a project to get running and roadworthy for when I turned 16, so I would have my own car to drive. The insurance totaled the car and waived the deductible. I just had to give them the car and they gave me a check. Luckily, it helped that my parents had put full coverage on the car, so I got back most of what I had put into it. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Screw that guy and screw that school. I just want my dang car back. That guy must have had one tight spiral to get away with that. Who knows, maybe I'll get drafted to the Rams. Sorry. Story 15. A 14-year-old took some Xans and got drunk. She wound up getting fooled around with by a bunch of seniors and football players, most of whom were adults, while someone filmed it on their phone. I think she didn't want to press any charges, so maybe she didn't consider it SA, but she wasn't in any position to consent, obviously. Nobody but the guy filming got in any trouble. This strikes me as one of those cases where the DA should have just pressed charges anyway. I've got no jokes. That's just really messed up. Story 16. Not highly illegal, but someone planted a weed plant in front of the principal's office. Funny thing is that he didn't know what it was. Let it grow until it was around 1 meter tall, then finally realized what it was and it was removed and had an assembly to try and scare whoever's planted it to come forward for reprimanding. Funniest crap had everyone rolling when he kept asking, "What is this plant?" Because he legit didn't know, nor did the admin care enough to report it to him. He wasn't a popular principal. Maybe he should have tried it, just to calm down a little. Story 17. Kid got together with all his friends and got nudes of girls from school, all underage, and burned a DVD with all the pics and started selling it. Well, the principal found out, and instead of turning it over to the police, he got a copy and was caught messing off to it in his office. School swept it under the rug, and he used some kind of clause in his contract basically saying they couldn't legally say anything about it. He got quietly retired, and they got a new principal. This happened after I got out of school, and we used to always joke that he was into kids. Crazy stuff. Ugh. Oh, that's gross. Story 18. I went to a private boarding school in rural Vermont. The class body was made up of mostly kids who had been expelled for disciplinary reasons. Despite this, there was little supervision. Students could opt to live in cabins scattered about the campus if they didn't want to live in a dorm. There was a lot of hardcore partying going on, as well as a wealth of petty crime. On multiple occasions, someone would bring in a supply of strong hallucinogenics, and the whole school would trip. Lots of staff and student liaisons, and lots of petty crimes occurred. But the most illegal thing was the school itself. 2 years before I attended, they had their ability to issue high school diplomas suspended by the state. That didn't stop them until a visible unalive on campus caused the state to shut them down for good 5 years after I graduated. I can't imagine why they would have their high school diploma ability suspended. Story 19. Our computer teacher was using school equipment to pirate all kinds of stuff. This was 2000 to 2002-ish, and the guy was a dot-com millionaire who used his teaching job to just hang out with high school kids and have fun, in a non-creepy way. We spent his class building and upgrading our personal gaming machines, and he had a big CD case full of pirated operating systems and software. He'd used the budget the school gave him for hardware to buy the latest and greatest video cards, and our final for that class was a Quake 3 tournament. A group of his favorite students also worked at Blockbuster, so they'd take the pre-release DVDs to him, rip them, and upload them to piracy sites from the school's T1. On 9/11, I remember being in his class watching a cam version of the latest Spider-Man movie. Am I legally allowed to say this guy sounds awesome? If not, then I totally disown it, for sure. Story 20. Had a physics teacher in high school who had all sorts of rumors going around about him, like that he was kicked out of his old school for trying to make CP with students and other messed up stuff. He seemed really distant and creepy, but most thought it was just rumors, until the day the idiot made a stupid mistake during class. He had forgotten that his laptop was still connected to the projector in front of the class, and we all watched him as he casually sat at his desk and browsed through a folder containing candid pictures of the under-18 swimming squad. I went to an all-boys school, and at the time we were all like, this is really messed up, but nobody ever confronted him, and it never reached management. Hope the creep isn't still teaching today. I'm sensing an awful pattern where the very people that shouldn't be around kids tend to be the ones closest to them. Story 21. Not your typical illegal thing, but handling bats. There was a colony of bats in the roof of the science building, which was pretty unusual for my desert city. So whenever someone found a dead or injured bat on the ground, everyone would crowd around to see it and try to touch it. The animal-loving girls would all be upset, and some butthole would say he was going to smash its head. The Hot Topic crowd would joke about turning into vampires, etc. Depends on who was there. This only happened maybe once or twice a year, but in my junior year, a science teacher who actually knew what the heck she was doing caught us and freaked out about the diseases we could get. Everyone had to get a rabies booster, but they were also worried about the hantavirus, Lyme disease, and the actual Black Plague. Yeah, I don't think bats should be touched, consumed, or really even looked at. Let's just stay away. Story 22. The football coach was having relations with multiple underage female students. One of the girls was 13 and the oldest was 15. Everyone knew it. The teachers, the principal, all the students, everyone. No one, especially not the school administrators, ever did anything. This was Southern Alabama in the 90s. Football was king, and our coach took us to at least one state championship. Without a winning football team, you don't have football boosters. So it just went on and on, at least as long as I was in school there. I feel like just saying this is Southern Alabama in the 90s shouldn't be that big of a cop-out. Ugh. Story 23. During my senior year, I duplicated government property. I made fake sport passes for my good buddies during the football season. The only thing that was missing was the school mascot embedded in the background. Our football and basketball teams sucked, so no one wanted to pay. Basketball season, word got out, and people got red paper and wrote fake pass and Sharpie on it. So one of my buddies got caught with one of my good ones and ratted me out. Following Monday, a cop came and got me out of class. Had a meeting with principal and cop saying I would be charged because I was 18 and it was a serious matter. They went to meet with athletic director cop, escorting me the whole time. They thought it was a scheme that was going on for years. Told them I was the initial mastermind and only made 5 passes, even though it was more like 10. He yelled a bit, should have got 7 days out of school and 7 days in school, only got 7-day in-school suspension because I had a good track record. Parents were harder on me than the school. And his friend ratted him out? Clearly, there's no honor among fake sport passes anymore. Story 24. This girl that went to my church was the golden child and was very close to this one young 30s teacher. They waited about 6 months after she graduated to get engaged officially. Honestly, I realized that stuff happens. Adults grooming kids. But what makes me mad the most about this situation is that everyone was super happy for them. They're our church's star couple. It's the weirdest thing ever. Dude in his late 20s was messing around with a teenager, but waited until she graduated high school for them to go public. And I switched from late 20s, young 30s because they had been dating since about her sophomore year. So this relationship started with a 28-year-old messing around with his 15-year-old student. You have to remember, if this was a Catholic church, the standards really aren't that high. Story 25. Started when I was there. I graduated in 2012 and don't live in my hometown anymore, but according to my dad, it's still going on. There was a huge heroin epidemic in that school. I graduated with 700 kids in my class, and know of at least 3 who OD'd and died within a year of graduating. It's a very nice area, lots of money, so it was a good number of rich kids who ended up getting hooked. Also, a kid on the football team got a DUI, but a certain college paid it off because he had a full ride. He is not a remarkable player in my book, but has done pretty well. My brother, who was a year younger, said he was the biggest turd and not smart at all. Yeah, heroin's messed up and very addicting. Not that I've done it, I'm just saying from outside. Okay, whatever. Story 26. A group of honor students obtained a master key to the school and then started to break into classrooms, find tests, then photocopy them and put them back. Went on for something like a year before they got caught because the school noticed the amount of photocopy paper missing as they made more and more copies as the group expanded to include more and more honor students. The students ended up with a slap on the wrist, and several went to the top schools like Princeton and such. One of the main perpetrators is now a judge. The school had students that primarily came from one of three areas of the city: a rich area, an upper/middle class area, and views in kids from disadvantaged areas. 90% of the participants in the scandal came from the rich area, and I'm positive this was a factor in the leniency of the punishments for obvious premeditated felonies. These were kids who made very adult decisions and very easily could have been arrested and tried as adults, but they were practically unpunished. They didn't even receive lower marks in classes that it was known they had cheated in. If this had happened post Lori Loughlin type crap, this would have been nationwide news. But since it was the late 80s/early 90s, it was not considered news at all. You know, not great, but borderline impressive, you know what I mean? Also, that judge, I would like to know what his ruling percentage is on cheating. Story 27. The chemistry teacher and his wife, who was also a teacher at the same school, don't remember what subject, were the teachers you'd spend years hearing older kids talk about how awesome they are and how fun their classes are. Everyone got excited if they got put in these teachers' classes at the beginning of the year, and everyone who didn't then was bummed. The girls liked him because he was younger and fun and somewhat good looking, and so was she. They were like the beautiful power couple that everyone wants to know. Then it all went to crap. Turns out he was having an affair with another teacher at the school and got caught somehow through the school computer system, emails or something. I don't remember, it's been 10 plus years. All the students were heartbroken that this man they looked up to would do something like this. That's not even the bad part. In the process of investigating, the school found tons and tons of pictures on his computer, going back for years, up the skirts of the cute girl students he would put in the front row. Turns out, he was using an Elmo projector/camera thing that sat on a shelf at the front of the class to take upskirt shots all the time. Imagine going from adoring this teacher to being disgusted at what he did to his wife to then finding out he had pictures of your legs and crotch on his HSI computer. Makes my skin crawl. He's in prison, and his now ex-wife doesn't teach anymore. No idea what happened to the other woman. Never meet your heroes. Or, they'll cheat on their wives and then take photos of your underwear? Ew. Story 28. There was a group of 4 tough guys at my high school who used to film each other beating up handicapped people at night around town. They would do the same to really drunk people leaving bars late at night. Unfortunately, they were not small guys and people were afraid to confront them. They used to drive around with the tapes and recording equipment in the trunk of the car they shared. They got caught because one day some stuff happened and they jumped my friend group as we were biking down the road together. The 4 of us, being able-bodied human beings, put up a fight and hurt 2 of them pretty bad. We were also 2 to 3 years younger. This was very public, in the middle of the day on a busy road, near an on and off ramp for the local highway. As they tried to take off in their car, 2 Greyhound buses driving by and a woman in a minivan cut across the road to block the lanes and lock them in. The tough guys ended up driving off the road and through the debris and foliage on the side of the road and took off. Everyone got a real good look at them, and police found them a few hours later with all the stuff still in their trunk. We eventually went to court months later about it, and they had the audacity to tell the magistrate that they were just trying to teach us a lesson about how to behave. Fast forward 15 years, one of them is dead, 2 were in prison, and 1 is a drug addict back home still. Growing up, everyone I saw in a leather jacket I just assumed loved to dance and sing. But unfortunately, life isn't Greece. Story 29. I went to school in Miami. Just name a crime. Kid got his throat slit one day. Kid gave out really overpowering pot brownies to half the school another day. Teacher bought my prom room and liquor. Same teacher had relations with my friend. Another teacher fought a kid after school at a meeting spot. Tons of cocaine. A few kids brought guns every day, and lots of kids brought knives. Everyone smoked all day. Basically, screw these other stories. That stuff was just Wednesday to me. It's not all the time you see somebody wave a flag so boldly that, no, my life was the worst. Story 30. I'm convinced that our principal, who was dying of cancer, secretly changed the grades of a lot of failing students before she ended up kicking the bucket. I personally knew 5 students who had no business graduating, received their high school diplomas, and from what I heard, other teachers said the same thing too. The ones that didn't either dropped out or changed schools before she made the final changes. It's even weirder because under those circumstances, the principal has to have a written letter or documentation explaining why she had to change a couple of grades, so I'm convinced it also had to be an inside job. This woman took that school from being a poorly graded ranked school in the county to one of the best in under 2 years, so there was no way people would ever investigate or even question her. Plus, she died a few months later, and it's not like the county school system is going to be like, well, looks like you're going to have to give back your diplomas. Well, is it illegal? Or is she a hero? I mean, I could only pray for that kind of curve. Story 31. A friend of mine was the edibles guy for our high school and used to sell trays of brownies and cookies pretty much in plain sight. He would get away with it by doing his business during class and basically paying off the hall monitors, mostly older Italian ladies, with tiramisu once or twice a week. He would bring in tiramisu and they would just let him roam the halls freely because they thought he was just a sweet kid. Meanwhile, we were all off our butts during and after class on some high-potency edibles he would cook up. Never underestimate the power of a little tiramisu. Story 32. Things from me and my friend group. Girlfriend was suspended for 3 months pending a hearing for lighting a garbage on fire in the school. It was one of those big Rubbermaid gray bastards. She was just spraying paper balls with perfume and burning them. One she threw in the trash started a fire and we bailed in fear of getting in trouble. The entire school was evacuated. Principal stuck up for her and she was admitted back to school. Alcohol was frequently brought to school. I can't count how many times that same girlfriend or I brought some whiskey in our morning coffee thermoses. Personally, I was the biggest pot dealer in the school. I'd weigh out 10 sacks, 10 grams, 10 20 sacks, and 10 half-eighths, and put them in various pockets each day so I'd be able to access them easily. I'd leave with no more and would have to make several trips to my car throughout the day. Was brought into the office and questioned by police and principals because some of the parents overheard me arranging an LSD deal. Luckily, they couldn't prove anything, and I told them it must be another blue-haired kid. I was the only person with blue hair in the school. Friend brought a crossbow to school because he is an idiot and was caught with it in his locker and expelled. This same friend had gotten into it with someone earlier that year and lit their locker on fire. Friends and I were eating lunch behind school and another group, actually one was my future girlfriend mentioned above, was smoking bowls while some jocks played football nearby. We saw campus cops running toward us and told smokers to bail, which they did. It still smelled like pot, so the cops brought us in, but my friend had a he was returning it, bong in his backpack, and fled on his skateboard. He actually dang near made it, but a cop who was giving a speech in criminal law was leaving the campus at that moment and heard the call and intercepted him. He was arrested. The rest of us were brought in and searched, but during the confusion had ditched all our contraband and bushes on the way to the office. Side story. Later that year, we were asked to make a movie about witch hunts. We were perturbed they didn't bring in any of the jocks who were hanging out nearby, just punks. We reenacted everything shockingly well done. We had a contract, an actual cop outfit a friend stole from his brother for a day, had AV kids edit for us, killer soundtrack, the works. However, the principal refused to reenact our meeting with him about student rights after we were searched. In lieu of that, we printed out a picture of Hitler, and every time it was his time to talk, we just shook the picture a little and had a voice in the background. This work of absolute art was unsurprisingly not taken well by the teacher, nor the principal when shown to him. We failed and were made to read The Giver as a punishment, which is a top book and highly recommended to everyone. Ninja edit. Oops, I forgot a great one. Our metal shop teacher was out for 2 weeks. During this time, we had a sub who knew nothing of metal shop and just sat in the classroom the whole time. Me and other guys who ran the bum table mocked up some throwing knives / stars in AutoCAD and started burning into burying them, then selling them to people. The metal shop teacher caught us when he got back. but he just gave us a stern talking to. By rights, we should have been expelled, but we ran a business out of the metal shop, selling planters and benches and stuff, and it would have gone under if we were all gone. So his hands were kind of tied. This is one of those times where someone says, "What's the most illegal thing that happened at your high school?" And they answer, "Me." Story 33. Teacher went to jail for having relations with a minor student. She was an absolutely disgusting woman too. I don't know who would ever want to get up in that. The kid looked fairly normal too. She lost her job and went to jail. Couple seniors got caught messing with a girl in the boys' gym locker room. One of those dudes is in jail now for a string of big thefts. He had been stealing car radios while in high school, so it didn't really surprise me too much. I saw plenty of drugs exchange hands, but I'm pretty sure that's every school. Some kids beat and killed a Canadian goose on the property. Somebody, in the earlier days of the internet, found some way in the system to order a bunch of stuff on the school computers using school funds somehow. I guess they got a credit card number in the system? Our IT department was the Spanish teacher's husband, who also worked over at the elementary school teaching computer class. So it's not like anything was locked down. Probably just found a Word doc in the internet that had credit card info on it. Some kid tied himself up and then called the police, saying that he'd been tied up by another person, and they found out he was lying. That kid was always a bit weird. Our high school girls basketball team went to state one year, so our school arranged a couple school buses to take a bunch of us down there. I smoked weed and cigarettes on that bus, as did many others. There was also a lot of alcohol around. Lots of kids got pantsed on the sidewalk by the stadium. 100 kids absolutely out of control with like 4 chaperones. I assume they'll never do something like that again. Our school had a teachers' union strike that lasted a couple weeks. They didn't really know what to do with us, so it was all just a bunch of hanging out in the auditorium for most of the day. It was freaking awesome. Few days in, everyone started bringing in vodka inside water bottles. That was an amazing 2 weeks, to be honest. Let me guess, Ohio or Florida? Story 34. Before I describe what actually happened, I need to explain something about weeples. Weeples are, or were at the very least, these little balls of fluff about the size of golf balls. They're often festooned with googly eyes, hats, plastic feet, or any number of other accessories, making them look rather like a crafting project undertaken by a group of 5-year-olds. Weeples were fairly coveted items when I was in the 6th and 7th grade, because you could earn them as a reward for selling magazine subscriptions through this fundraising event that the school held every year. And if you had the right weeples, you actually had the chance to win a fair amount of money in one of the daily contests. If none of this is making much sense, don't worry. It was difficult to understand back then as well. Basically, you'd get different varieties of weeples for selling different amounts of magazine subscriptions. Then, every day, each weeple-bearing student would be allowed to pull a piece of candy out of a hat. If the candy had a sticker on it, the student would win a certain amount of money. That amount would be multiplied by each weeple that they owned, plus an additional multiplier for, okay, you know what? None of this is important. What is important is that certain members of the school faculty viewed this entire event as a way of threatening or bribing some of the students. There was one young woman, for instance, who was told that she'd be set up to win $50 if she gave up her spot in some contest or another so that the teacher's son could take her place. Another student was told that his winnings would be confiscated if he didn't take responsibility for the fire alarm having been pulled. Nothing really terrible happened, at least not that I heard about, but there were enough shady dealings to make the entire thing seem pretty dang unpleasant, even for those of us who weren't really involved. The twisted punchline to the whole affair came about when one student offered another a mature favor in exchange for his weeples, and when folks found out about the deal, only he was suspended. Not, as you might think, because of his involvement in the exchange, but because it was against the fundraiser's rules to share or give away weeples. Harassments or scandals? No, that's not a big deal. But the second you try to share or give away your weeples, that's where we draw the line! Story 35. This happened after I left. Got told by a teacher I ran into, who I had gotten along well with. 2 12-year-olds got into a fight that resulted in one of them strangling the other. Apparently, the strangled kid was counted as legally dead for about 2 minutes. If you're looking for a story from when I was there, the chef got fired when I was 14. Turns out he'd be stashing drugs in the school kitchens. The problem was, he used to make these awesome pizza panini sandwiches. Practically everyone I knew would buy one of these during break or lunch. When the chef left, there were no more pizza paninis, and over 1/3 of my year got sick within a few days. Lots of symptoms that were the same as drug withdrawal. Guessing the chef was storing the drugs in the food as well. That's I wanna go to pizza panini! Story 26. A guy in my grade would save nudes from every girl in our school he could get them from. He was a pretty handsome guy and managed to be a flirt with girls until he received nudes. Sometimes he convinced other guys to give or sell him nudes of attractive girls he didn't have. He had hundreds of pictures until he had nudes of just about every attractive female in our grade, including several from other grades. I was good friends with him, and he would sell views of a certain girl's nudes for $5 each on his phone. Or if you wanted him to send them to you, he charged $40. He made hundreds of dollars off the morons I witnessed during lunch go up to him and pay him for his service. He did everything unknowing to every girl in our school. I never agreed with this, but he was my friend, so I never ratted him out. Whenever he was sending girls' nudes to others, he would take their phone during the process to ensure they deleted his text and any easy-to-obtain proof of this. It somehow took 8 months before our school authorities had knowledge of this, but before authorities confiscated his phone, he deleted all pictures from his phone so nothing was found. I talked to him later about it, and he said he still had nudes saved to his laptop, but he doesn't keep any on his phone anymore. He was never caught or charged with anything. Edit. This is a bit old, but I definitely want to make a comment that CP should never be tolerated. It's one of the worst offenses someone could take advantage of and should be reported immediately. I was stupid at the time to brush it off, and besides, for this incident, the kid wasn't a bad person. He does not get involved in anything like this anymore, and if anything happens like this to you, you should report it and make sure anything like this does not occur. Oh, that's gross. When the handsome use their powers for evil. Ugh. Story 37. So the first day of my senior year, 2009, I walked into my first class of the day, and there was this guy in the class who was standing awkwardly in the back. My friends and I figured that he was a student teacher who would be helping us out in class, but his name was called during attendance, and we all thought he was super old. Throughout the day, we'd see him, and we learned more as the day went on. He said he had throat cancer, which is why he looked and sounded the way he did. He said he was living with his uncle and had just moved here. One of our classmates had passed away that previous summer from brain cancer, so that kid's friend group, popular but friendly kids, welcomed him with open arms. My friend group, nerdy smart kids, was still suspicious and kept referring to him as creepy old guy. When I went home that night, my mom told me I should be nicer and stop judging him, as I was the new kid at school once too. So I planned to talk to him on the second day, at least to appease my mom. Except during homeroom, the principal made an announcement. It turned out that our new classmate was 52. He'd registered himself at the school, pretending to be his nephew in an attempt to write a book about high school students and the lack of security measures in school systems. Looking back, it's terrifying that he was able to do that. After that incident, the school district really tightened up their security, but who knows what his real plan was in doing all of this. Oh, and how they figured it out? He had tattoos on his arms that were definitely from a long time ago, as the black ink had started to turn green. And apparently, that kind of ink is no longer used. Wow, cancer or not, I think I could spot a 52-year-old when I see one. And how smooth of this guy if that wasn't really his plan to just be like, I was gonna write a book about how easy it should have been for you to catch me? Okay, that sounds cool. Story 28. I was a band nerd all throughout school, including high school. When I got to high school, things kinda got turned up a notch. The marching band had amazing and spiffy uniforms. The wind orchestra got to travel to nationwide festivals, and we got to play some really wonderful core repertoire. It was honestly an astounding experience that really shaped me into who I am today. I found out afterwards that the only reason we got to do all these fancy things was because the father of the drum major, student leader of the marching band, had been embezzling a bunch of money from his company and spending it on the music program. Also, not illegal, but rather seedy, the music director at the school ended up getting into a relationship with one of the students after they graduated. I hope everything was on the up and up, but we did go on a lot of long trips that involved hotels and whatnot. For an experience that shaped you into the person you are today, it sucks it's surrounded by so much embezzlement and grooming. Ooh. Story 39. Underage relations, drugs, and drinking. Normal stuff. Although there was a huge underground POG, Magic, and Pokemon tournament ring at school, those were all banned because reasons, mostly the gambling and betting anti-cards, but it was kept quiet until one kid brought in an expensive card / POG and lost it in the ante. Their parents were mad and made a real stink at the PTA meetings until the other kid coughed up the ante. After that, they unbanned the games, but made ante illegal, and had one of the teachers spend their lunchtime observing the games so no one could ante, cheat, or play unsportsmanlike. Never gamble anything you're not willing to lose. I didn't feel like that should be illegal, but rather a valuable lesson. Story 40. 4 things. 1. There was a teacher who was accused of inappropriately touching some of the boys, quite a few years before I started there. He was taken to court and acquitted due to insufficient evidence. About 10 years later, some other boys brought similar charges against him. Before he went to court, he unalived himself from a tree in his front yard. It's still not 100% clear if he did it or if he just didn't want his name dragged through the mud again and for his family to have to put up with it. 2. Another teacher, this was about 5 years before I started, was not only accused of inappropriately touching, but having relations with some of his female students. People wanted to charge him, but some of the girls protected him, and the school district transferred him to another school. 3. While I was actually there was a guy, Mike, in my grade who worked at a convenience store in town. He started stealing cigarettes from the store and selling them to students at the school, double illegal for theft and selling tobacco to a minor. The convenience store eventually found out and threatened him with charges. He almost went to juvie, but the store owner forgave him under the condition he do some community service / paid off the amount of his theft. 4. Not necessarily illegal, but entirely unethical. Our school's drama teacher, who was married to our art teacher, started an affair with her student. I say not illegal because the student was over 18 when the affair started. Towards the end of that year, the drama teacher left her husband and married the student about 6 months after he graduated. The ex-husband, art teacher, had a full mental breakdown. There were reports of him starting a bonfire in his backyard and dancing around it, singing in his underwear. He left the next year and was never heard from again. Last I heard, the teacher and her former student are still married. Just to play devil's advocate, perhaps the reason she left him was because he kept dancing and singing around bonfires in his underwear. Not super romantic. Story 41. I graduated 13 years ago, but my sister is 10 years my junior, and this happened during her senior year. A female teacher and the male athletic director gave their classes assignments and went to his office to have relations during the school day. They were caught by another staff member looking for the lady after they popped by the class and were told that Mrs. Name hadn't been there for almost 20 minutes. This happened in early May. They continued to teach for the remainder of the year until in June, he retired after being given the option of retirement or termination. She continues to teach. Even more funny weird, not funny, haha, is that the kids had dedicated the yearbook to him. 20 minutes? Good for him. Story 42. Science teacher arrested for harassing students online. New transfer kid, super homophobic, decided he needed to prove himself. Kicked in the handicap bathroom door because our school had the openly trans students use it for their comfort and safety. He beat the crap out of a girl in there and ripped out her catheter and left her in the floor bloody. He got jumped a week later by both of the main gangs at school. Girl he attacked wasn't trans. She'd been in a car accident 2 months earlier and was paralyzed from the waist down. She was also a tutor and had helped most of the handbangers bring their grades up to passing. She was well loved by pretty much everyone. Last I heard, he'd gone to jail and didn't make it out. The girl just passed the bar exam and still works as a tutor for the school district. Wow! What an Uno reverse card! This guy was clearly phobic, attacked someone, and then he got attacked later. I mean, the circle of life. Story 43. Had a history teacher that was an absolute dog, kept a yellow folder in his class where he documented interactions with students because he was in the throes of being investigated for harassing / molesting girls on the cheer team. Secretly had his TA, just an old instrument in her senior year, sleep over at his house often. He was a creep and annually hosted a study party for his AP classes at his house, which I believe must have been something to help him groom / seduce potential girls. He got arrested a few years later for having a bunch of cocaine though. Lots of other standard illegal stuff, but this story is my absolute favorite. The French teacher was a bit oblivious. Some kids were hitting a pipe in the back when she wasn't looking. When she noticed the smoke and the smell of pot, she panicked, couldn't figure out who it was. So she closed all the windows and the door so nobody outside in the hall would know, thus effectively hotboxing her entire class. Good times. Wow, that's one way to do it. Or maybe she did know what was going on and realized the best way to get down to the bottom of it was to help people loosen up a little bit. Story 44. My driver's ed teacher was dating a 17-year-old girl from a nearby high school. She broke up with him, so he snapped her neck and left her in the woods to die. For the next few days, he would have his driver's ed students drive by the park he left her at to see if any cops were there. They found her after a couple of days and arrested the guy on school grounds. She had permanent brain damage and he's still in jail about 15 years later. Edit. Forgot to add that back when they would record these country line dancing nights at some bar and play them on some local TV station during the week. He was recorded doing some line dancing just after he dumped her body. 'Cause you know, Gotta do some country line dancing after attempted murder to calm the nerves. You know what they say. Nothing like going to a hoedown after you beat the hoedown. Story 45. We used a drain tunnel system under our high school to skip class. Someone would cut the fence during the holidays, which leads to the tunnel. It was quite a complex system. It would lead all the way to the train station, 20-minute walk from school. It also had chairs and tables in the little pockets of space, so guys would hang out there to use and sell weed and MDMA. It was used from years 7 to 12, until the dealer kids beat the crap out of someone there because of his debt. The other reason, I kid you not, there was this Asian guy who hated this other guy for calling him school shooter and other names. This guy in particular always used this unique path to get to the tunnel. Asian guy literally sets a trap hole there and puts brush over the hole. The guy breaks both his legs. The guy was calling him all sorts of names like school shooter. Should have been calling him Bugs Bunny. Story 46. It happened after one summer break. A girl who just a few months ago had been kinda overweight seemed to have slimmed down a little. Not a lot, but just enough that you would notice. Then she put all the weight back on. Then a few days later, it melted right off. Then on, then off. Over and over for half the year, this girl kept losing and gaining weight. Turns out she had lost weight and even managed to keep it off. What everyone thought was her struggling with a diet was actually her smuggling bags of weed into school by taping them to her belly, then padding her shirt to make it look more natural. Well, you know what? Respect to her for losing the weight, probably just so she could smuggle weed, but you know what? Everyone's got a motive. Story 47. History teacher that's been working there for 30-ish years got convicted of grooming and sleeping with several students. A former student that graduated several years ago came out and told what was happening and showed proof, including multiple emails and private notes and even a sexually suggestive yearbook signing from him. After that, multiple people started coming forward. Faculty knew what was happening and swept it under the rug. The superintendent that's now running for mayor was quoted as saying, "This is a man's life we're talking about," when a student made a complaint. Well, the absolute quick wit of that guy. What about these children that are being harassed and assaulted? This is a man's life we're talking about. Thanks, Mayor. You got my vote. Story 48. They had an issue with students selling weed. Problem was, they could only catch the small dealers but not the main supplier. They never did find out who it was, but it was someone well-liked enough that the 10 or so dealers they caught refused to give any names. It was a friend of mine. All the students knew, but she was letting her dealers keep a decent profit and putting all her profit towards her dad's medical bills. They thought she babysat when in reality, she was just staying out of the house long enough to make it seem like she was off babysitting. No one said a word. Her dad's perfectly healthy now and loves bragging how his daughter gave up her hard-earned money to help him, so we consider it a win. Dude, I'm so glad I could help fund your medical bills. Yeah. Story 49. The girls of my classroom tried to poison our biology teacher on their lab class. Apparently, the teacher went to the bathroom and they went to the shelf and poured whatever they found in the teacher's water bottle. No one knew exactly what it was. When she came back, she smelled the water and noticed something was wrong. They weren't expelled nor charges presented. We lived in a small town away from the big city, but they were suspended for a few weeks. Just to clarify, we were a large classroom group, so we were often split by genre in classes. While the girls were in biology trying to poison the teacher, the boys were in English class. Kinda makes you worry about what they might have found in the English teacher's water bottle. Subjects? Predicates? Ooh. Story 50. The incident didn't occur at my high school, but she was my 8th grade social studies teacher in middle school. She was busted for embezzling money from local elementary schools, about 34 grand in all, as the principal. Pretty small potatoes compared to the other stories here, but the thing that makes it memorable was that she had this air about her because she used to be a speechwriter for Barbara Bush, so she said. She was one of the more accomplished teachers at our middle school. Then years later, I found out she was busted ripping off schools to pay her own personal expenses. Guess she left Washington, but Washington never left her. Such a shame. She was bragging about being a speechwriter for Barbara Bush, when in fact middle schoolers would be way more impressed to hear that she was embezzling money! Story 51. My high school is right next to a military base, and there are retired secret tunnels under the school that goes into the military base, since the building used to be a part of the base. Well, some people from my grade and the grade younger went into the tunnels and snooped around in there. Not only trespassing, but trespassing onto military property. There was nothing much anymore, although there was a bed and some religious symbols. The bed looked like it had been slept in recently too, like there was no dust on it. So you stumbled into what may have been an underground prison of some sort and just left it there. Huh. I need to know more. Story 52. We had a movies folder on the school network where everyone could dump their pirated movies. Next thing you know, all the boys are split from the girls and have an assembly with the local police. We are informed by the police that though we ourselves are underage, that having a copy of any image or video is deemed possession of CP. Next thing you know, one kid starts arguing with the cops, saying the girls should then be in more trouble for the production and distribution of CP. In the end, a few of the girls left our school, and the kid that argued also ended up leaving. That kid sounds like quite the delinquent. To be like, no, I did something wrong, but, surely they should go down with me. Story 44. This was the early 2000s, and there was a zero tolerance policy at my school when it came to kids fighting. So if you got into a fight, you got arrested. But kids still wanted to fight, as kids do. The PE coach had a policy where if you wanted to fight in PE class, he would let you. The caveat was that you had to let him spank you first. If you got your spanks, he'd lock you, the other guy, and himself in the locker room and let you duke it out while he watched. He also let anyone else in the class watch if they wanted to. But if you wanted to get locked in the locker room and watch the fight, you also had to let him spank you. It's one of those things that 15 years later you talk to your friends about it, like, dude, did that really happen or did I just imagine all that? Knowing what I know now, that's crazy, weird, and creepy. But when all your friends agree that yes, this did in fact happen, we all remember it too, at least you know you aren't the crazy one. What kind of weird transaction was that? Holy crap, if they wanted to fight so bad, they should have beat that guy up. Story 55. One girl wanted to up her math grade and offered the teacher mature favors in order to give her a passing grade. The teacher declined but didn't report her. Big mistake. Girl then told everyone that it was him who made these offers, etc., and she was the one who declined. That story got out of hand and the principal and her parents got wind of it and sued. The teacher was fired and his wife left him. Only at the hearing at the court she made some mistakes in her story and things didn't add up, so the judge and the defense had further questions. And because she didn't really think things through properly, she had to admit it in the end that she lied because he had refused her offer. Teacher got rehired but looked 10 years older after that. His wife somehow didn't come back because she already had a new guy. Still have contact to him. Best teacher I ever had, so most people didn't believe the accusations, but obviously actions had to be taken. The school now has a policy that no teacher can have a discussion with a girl without another student or teacher present and with the door closed, not only because of the protection of students, but also to protect the teachers. This is all really messed up, but holy crap, the wife just moved on that fast? Gosh dang it, no respect. Story 56. Saw 14 to 15-year-olds doing hardcore drugs. I have no idea where they got the money from or who in their right minds would sell it to them, but me being a few years older and never having thought about doing such things absolutely terrified me. Now, a few years later, I meet kids as young as 12 that smoke and drink. At that age, I played RuneScape for 12 hours a day. Where did we go wrong? Oh, but some say RuneScape is just as or even more so addicting. You ever meet a guy who opens up a trench coat and says, "You got the stuff?" And he's just got a dragon axe and some iron chainmail? Story 57. We had a really cool substitute teacher. He was in his 50s. He had a big white beard which made him look kinda like Santa. And it makes sense when you hear that he actually worked as a part-time mall Santa. My Spanish teacher loved him, so he subbed for our class pretty often. He'd always bring a tote bag full of trinkets so he could do magic tricks for the class, distracting us from our work in the best way. He also had a sharp wit, thus roasting the crap out of the more disruptive and disrespectful students. We liked him. He was a great guy. That is, until he was convicted for over 6 counts of possession of CP. It really took all of us by surprise, considering he really wasn't even creepy compared to some of our other older substitutes that we had. Never trust a mall Santa! Story 58. Oh man, I have a tale to tell. Not my school, but the rival high school in the area. There was this creepy dude who harassed the cheerleading squad and kept getting talked to about it by the school. He says he wasn't being creepy and was just trying to be nice to the girls because he's a nice guy. Yes, the r/nice guys kind. Eventually, he got fed up with the rejection and decided to hack into the entire cheerleading team's Snapchats. He then made a new Twitter account, probably set up a ton of VPNs too, and started tweeting at the cheerleaders, saying stuff like, "It's too late for second chances. and "Daddy probably hates this." If the cheerleader he added didn't apologize or do what he wanted, he would leak their nudes. This went on for a few weeks, and they couldn't figure out who this guy was. To the girls, it was pretty clear who it was though. When it was apparent that he was becoming a suspect, he mass released all the nudes as well as nudes from the entire football team. He's in prison now. No offense to Twitter, but it makes sense that he'd use that platform. Story 59. 2 essay cases over the course of 3 weeks. A kid from my debate team got stabbed to death by middle schoolers while selling them jewel pods. A kid from my choir attempted to unalive himself by jumping from the 4th floor, got completely paralyzed. The school had to put up gates over the ledges on all the floors after another kid tried to do the same thing. Friend of mine got caught selling acid on campus. Girl who was new to the campus tried having relations with one of the popular guys in my friend group to climb the ranks. When it didn't work, she claimed that he SA'd her, but was proven wrong through text messages and stuff like that. When Yik Yak was a thing, there was a ton of cyberbullying. Unfortunately, I did take part in this and felt terrible about it afterwards, and personally apologized to the person I harassed. They are doing okay, and I still keep up with them. Not illegal, but the worst story I've heard. A girl from my friend group had relations with her boyfriend for the first time. Afterwards, she couldn't control her bowels and crapped all over the wall. When parents got home, she blamed it on their old dog. The parents had to put the dog down because they thought he was really sick. I don't know if this one is true, but all the other ones I witnessed firsthand or heard about through the news. Public school in Texas is like the Wild West. You animal! You got the dog killed! Story 60. 20 or so years ago in high school, I got caught smoking a J with a buddy by the drama teacher. He was kinda cool about it, confiscated it, and told us never to let him catch us again or else. Some sort of drama credit was required for graduation. Not my thing, so I signed up for the stagecraft. I painted sets. Anyhow, I had that same drama teacher for that class later in the day. I get to his class, he gets everyone to work, and then he calls me and my buddy over. We go backstage. Drama teacher: "You guys have a lot of work to do." Us: "Nope." Teacher: "You want to go out back and finish that J I took from you guys? I have one too." We stepped out back on some loading docks and burned joints with the drama teacher. Not as nefarious as murder or child molestation. We actually thought he was pretty freaking cool after that, but illegal nonetheless. If that isn't a drama teacher. Story 61. Our school networks in high school and college weren't the most secure, so I spent quite a bit of my time altering grades, taking tests, and stealing papers written by other students and reselling them, all for money. I would sell these services to well-off people or athletes struggling to stay academically eligible for their respective sports team. There were several staff members at my college that knew of this and looked the other way. I even lived with several members of the football team for 2 years rent-free, as long as I helped with their grades. Aunt Becky ain't got crap on me. She just got her messed up daughter into school. I helped people graduate college at the top of their class or with honors. I mean, illegal, but holy crap is this guy awesome. Story 62. Principal got fired for improper use of school funds. He bought exercise equipment like a stationary bike and a treadmill, I think, and just kept them in his office. And he bought a riding lawnmower that he apparently stored at the school, but would just take to his house whenever he felt like using it. And it wasn't the sort of lawnmower you could use for the school grounds. Too small. And he signed his own requisition forms. That's weird, the school funds seem to be oddly low, and the principal's yard looks quite well. Story 63. Not counting my brother's bookie business, we had a few things. This was the early days of soda machines taking dollar bills. Not actual counterfeiting measures, so you could photocopy a dollar bill and it would take it. School caught on and said they'd expel anyone doing it. So then it became gluing a string to a real dollar bill, letting it go in, get credit, and then yanking the dollar back out. Maybe someone was really good at making and selling bootleg DVDs and CDs. Not me, of course. That is illegal, Mr. FBI officer. And of course, the many people who sold weed. Prices got really good due to the competitive pricing. I never bought any, but I should have. Maybe someone grew some marijuana a couple times. Not me, of course, either, Mr. Officer. And I also didn't try the whole, SpongeBob tactic of tying money to a string and, tricking machines. I'm well within the rights. Story 64. A guy called in a fake school shooting threat because he found out his girlfriend was going to break up with him that day. Only about 20% of the student body showed up that day, myself included. English teacher gave us all a free 20 points, about 3% of the final grade, for showing up. Girl was expelled for having relations underneath the desk while watching Bill Nye. A guy got expelled his senior year for getting in a yelling match and pulling a knife out of his shoe. A guy got caught messing around with some MLP hentai in the band room closet. Pretty sure there was more, but this is just stuff that happened in my graduating class. And they say romance is dead. Seriously guys, don't do that though. Story 65. High school band director was accused of being a diddler. This is a couple years after I left. He had multiple daughters in that school and school district. I feel bad for them having to deal with that. Middle school. Somebody literally got what I believe to be the proper term, curb stomped. I believe he survived, but I can't imagine without serious effects. There was a kid who used to stab me with his safety pins, and one day I picked up a fire ant mound with bare hands and threw it at him. I'd told teachers previously what was going on, but he was never really punished for it. You can say I took matters into my own hands. Fighting with my fists, etc. isn't my thing, and I didn't want to start a brawl. Don't ask me why the ant pile seemed like the best option at the time, but that was a crap school. Fighting fire with fire! Ants! Ha! Alright, I'll see myself out. Story 66. So this might be the most unique one since I'm guessing by now this thread is full of sex with students selling drugs and assault and everything in between. Anyway, I heard about a couple guys in our sister high school were in a computer service class. Think of it as off hour, but you get service hours for helping out the IT department. Well, being in this class, if you will, it was only ever like 3 to 4 guys at a time. You basically helped the IT guy out, updating software, hardware, running virus scans, replacing power adapters for the laptops, etc. However, this position afforded you one thing that nearly no one else at the school had: the admin passwords. Now, allegedly, there were a couple different levels. The basic admin password let you adjust settings on the computers, update firmware, and everything, but there was one above that, which essentially allowed you server-level access. You could log in and literally have access to every single person's personal drive that was stored on the server. If I remember correctly, they said the drives were labeled with the owner's first initial, then last name, so not hard to figure out what drives belonged to the teachers and thus which ones contained the test for their class. For an entire semester, these guys sold every test, every quiz, everything you can imagine. They had access to incident reports that were in the dean's drive, stuff on teachers in the HR drive, everything. Oh, and I feel it's important to mention this high school was part of and on a college campus and shared their network. Though they never had a need to, they could have accessed everyone's drives at the university as well. They could have even pulled a fight club and deleted everything. They actually mentioned doing this, but weren't sure if there were backups being stored elsewhere. Wow, so cool, but so illegal, but also so awesome, but not really. I'm not condoning it at all. I'm just impressed, but seriously, don't do that. But wow.